6, continuing on page 2, through line 4, what the written statement to the city in which they are located or test for lack of what does that exactly do under section 473? And you know, I had other things on my mind. I didn't get a chance to pull all the statute books and look at it. Whether it's Representative Sundin or staff, could they explain that, or Mr. Dorn, former colleague, Mr. Dorman. I don't care who, but I'd like to understand what that means.
Representative Sundin, who would you like to help explain that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Or Norman or who?
I think Mr. Garman would probably be the most helpful at this point.
Welcome to our committee.
And Mr. Mitchell as well, Mr. Chairman.
Former Representative Norman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, my name is Dan Dorman. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Minnesota Partnership, and also representing our sister organization, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. And how I could word this is stay within the parameters of where I'm supposed to be, but we, both organizations, can't support the underlying bill for a couple of reasons. And one of the reasons is corrected in the amendment, which is the funding level. So I'm not sure how I'm supposed to say that, Mr. Chair, and try to fit into that.
Without the funding level, without the dollar amount, you can't talk.
Right. So without addressing that, I'll just address the non-funding stuff. The part of the amendment that we like, and I'm starting with, I guess everyone's view of history is somewhat different, but you think back to when the responsibility for broadband got transferred to a deed from Congress, primarily from the economic development standpoint. So our organization would agree with many of the comments that Representative Norton made. Our concern has been for the last several years of watching the funding allocation go out is, what we noticed is that there were not a lot of, or any small, medium, any size cities being funded. We thought it rather odd. So we worked with the maps, tried to figure that out. And so we got the database and started looking at who's in and who's out. And at a snapshot in time when that data was looked at, the vast majority of the cities in Greater Minnesota are excluded from possible funding. It doesn't mean they could be funded. So if you adopt this amendment, it doesn't mean that the underserved are somehow, or the unserved are going to be forgotten. They still can compete. This would just allow more people in Minnesota to actually apply. The way we interpret the data is that right now, the largest city is 3,300, the cities over that are excluded, but it isn't population, it's where you draw the line of what is underserved. And with the current definition of underserved, about 82% of Greater Minnesota residents are excluded from funding. So you start with that and you've excluded so many people already. We don't think that's where we ought to take this. So what the amendment that you have before you would do is open this up and let many more people in Greater Minnesota qualify for possible funding. It's still, they have to go through the application process. They would then have to be awarded, but they aren't excluding anybody. Just give more people an opportunity to actually be included in the funding. We do have concerns about other parts of the original bill. We can talk about those, I guess, later. But we really are pushing for redefinition of the term underserved, and I guess it is, depending where you look at it. But in this bill, the amendment would move it to 100 megabit up and down. If you don't have it, you don't have that high speed availability. If you don't have similar service to what you have here in the state office building, you would then be able to at least apply. Doesn't mean you're going to be successful, but you could at least apply. Also gives some preference to cities that can demonstrate from an economic development purpose that they have business and industry in their community that is being held back by this, and there are numerous cases of that. And so the base, the amendment that you now have before you would correct that I think, deficit in what we're currently talking about. So we think that the bar needs to be raised from where we're at today. The underlying bill goes the other way, and fewer people would qualify. That's concerning to us, Mr. Chair. I think that's the best I can do without touching on the dollar amount, Mr. Chair, and I respect it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm getting a little concerned here because even though, there's two issues here. One is whether we'll be able to vote on an amendment or not, and that's an issue that I think we need to talk about at some point, because to my knowledge, and I was looking through my packet, I don't see the rules in there, but I don't recall there being a rule in this committee that we couldn't do that. Now, if you can show me a copy of the rules that says that, I'm happy to, but there's none in my packet for whatever reason. And so I'm a little concerned about that, but aside from that, the other issues that we can't even talk about it, and I'm a little concerned when I hear former Representative Dorman saying, I can't talk about that. Well, this is a committee that we talk about lots of things, and the fact that people like or don't like the dollar amount, whether you allow a vote on it or not, I hope we can talk about it. And, you know, and I understand that there's some concern, and maybe some people haven't made up their mind whether they want to support this ultimately or not, but I think we do have to discuss not just the policy, or at least allow the discussion in this committee about whether we think this policy with that dollar amount is appropriate. So I just have to say that, like I said, I'm concerned at the testimony table when people are feeling like they have to not say their piece from their organization's perspective because they're afraid to talk about a dollar amount. And that, you know, whether we vote on it or not, I hope you'll rule that that's at least in order.
I think what I'm about ready to do is I'm going to rule this amendment out of order, and we'll look forward probably to having it in the next committee. And with that, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to hear some of the substance of the things, but evidently with several people in this committee and testified, that's not possible. So I will rule this amendment out of order. And Representative Sundin.
Mr. Chairman, I'm disappointed to hear that, not surprised, but disappointed.
What did you say?
But I'm going to appeal the ruling of the chair, and I'd like a roll call vote on that.
Very well. Can I appeal ruling of the chair in this instance?
And Mr. Chair, I'm gonna step up here and just say that I agree, and I understand what Representative Sundin wants to do, which is to really say, you know, we object strongly to the, you know, inability to have a robust discussion and to vote on an amendment that at least a member on my side, not maybe even on your side, feels strongly about, which is that this doesn't go far enough. But you know, I just want to say this is I've had this happen in one other committee, and where the rules are made on the fly, if you will, and that members come in without that understanding, and you are the chair, and you do get to make that rule, but I just want to be on record that I, for one, and I think certainly my author of the amendment and my members just are on record of being very disappointed and objecting to this.
Representative Norton, I also am disappointed that somebody can't discuss the parts of this amendment without mentioning money. It is not on the fly. I have discussed the fact with you and with the full committee that we will not talk about finance in a policy committee in a year that funding isn't, this is not a funding year. It's that simple, and if that is not possible to do it, then I have to rule it out of order, and I have the purview to do that without a vote of any.
And Mr. Chair, I agree that you do have the purview. As I said, I've seen this done before, and I'm disappointed, but I will give you your due as chair that you do get to make that decision.
And I think Representative Sundin knows that I feel disappointed. So with that,
And Mr. Chair, I'm not.
Representative Norton.
Thank you, and I want to say, I hear what you're saying. I guess I'm a little incredulous because it's surprising to me that we can't talk about this because it's not a budget year. Because I strongly suspect that at the end of the year, somewhere, there will be a bill that will spend money. And I'm pretty sure you probably think that's the case too. And this is one of the most important issues for many people in the state of Minnesota, broadband. It certainly, I hear it all the time, and obviously the author agrees. And I think, you know, in these committees where this bill comes up, to not be able to put this on the table with a really strong dollar amount as part of what potentially will be a budget bill is really unfortunate. And I understand that you're gonna rule the way you are, but I suspect there will be a budget bill, and I suspect that there will be broadband in that budget bill, and I'm gonna be really disappointed if, I don't serve on the jobs committee. This is my opportunity, even if I can't vote, to, and the author doesn't want to take up the $100 million. This is my opportunity to tell the world and my members and my constituents that $35 million isn't enough, and that I want it to change.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I would like to see enough money to take care of the needs, which still hasn't. And I also do not want to hamstring the finance committee when they get their targets, if they get one in the prospective supplementary budget, that we aren't going to make their decisions for them when we spend them or anything like that, and we wouldn't. So I said, we have many pressing issues in this state. We have transportation taxes and a million other things. And simply, this is a policy committee. Simply, as much as I would like to talk about it, we're unable to do that. So we will rule that out of order, and I hope it makes the next committee where it is appropriate to discuss that. And with that, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I respectfully acknowledge the authority of the chair on this issue, but I'd like to just reach back and remind the chair and the vice chair of communication that they disseminated at the onset of this committee 9 amendments or 9 rules that they were to live by here, and we're doing a pretty good job of that so far. Under number 4, the chair will determine time limits on debates, witnesses, and times allowed for bills and amendments. Nothing to do about the content of those amendments. Number 5, all substantive amendments should be given to the committee by 5 p.m. These are the only 2 rules that we saw about amendments, and again, I'm disappointed that we can't get through this and have a substantive conversation about very important